I would not be a divorce lawyer worth my weight in salt if I didn't tell you that it is really sound legal advice to get a prenup before you get married. But probably you're not going to listen to me. I get it. I didn't listen to me. I didn't get a prenup whenever I got married. It's not exactly the most romantic thing necessarily. But I do have one piece of advice for you if you're going to sign a prenup. And ladies, I'm mostly talking to us because this is when I hear it. If you're going to sign a prenup, do so with the intention that you intend to honor the prenup. That should go without saying, but I get so many calls and cases in the divorce context where somebody comes to me and is like, oh, I signed a prenup like forever ago, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And we've been married for 15 years and he has all this money in his business now. And don't I still get half of everything? Like, I don't have to follow that, do I? Yes, you have to follow it, provided it meets the elements, like there were disclosures, everybody had the opportunity to be represented by counsel, it wasn't against public policy. So long as it has the things that make it enforceable, it's probably going to be enforceable. So I want you to slow down for a second. Yes, you should get a prenup. That's just good legal advice. It's like a divorce in advance. I mean, it doesn't mean you're going to get divorced, but at least everybody knows what will happen if you do. But before you sign on the dotted line or tell your girlfriend or boyfriend you're going to sign on the bottom line, you need to think through all of the different ramifications of what could happen. What if they win the lottery, their business turns into the next Google, and in the beginning you signed off that none of it's going to be yours? Like, is that going to be cool with you? And vice versa for what if your stuff explodes? And what if all of a sudden is this going to serve you best? So just, yes, you should get a prenup, but I would only suggest you enter into it if you intend to honor it. I mean, that's just kind of like fair is fair because it's probably going to be valid. It's probably going to be effective. And probably someday, if you get divorced, almost half of people do, it's going to apply to your life and tell you how to split up all your stuff. When considering getting a prenup before your upcoming marriage, you want to think long and hard about which attorney you're going to work with. And somebody was asking me the other day, hey, can't I just get a document on LegalZoom and do that? And I'm honestly, if you've watched any of these videos, I'm not one of those people who says, oh, absolutely not. Lawyers are the only ones who know anything. I'm not like that. However, when it comes to doing your prenup, I would not trust the document I just Googled on the internet because you got to think this through. A prenuptial agreement is basically a divorce in advance. It says, or can say, depending on how it's written, how all of your stuff is going to get split up if you get divorced in the future. So of course you need a good lawyer who helps you think through all the risks and benefits about doing this versus Googling it and finding some sort of a document online. Because there are options. It's not like a one-size-fits-all prenup. You want to talk to a lawyer okay, one of the most common prenups that people do would be some agreement where everything that is separate property that we bring into the marriage and any income that comes from it, so say you make money renting out your apartment you owned or your condo that you owned before marriage and you make income, that would really be community property like both of y'all's, but you can change it, okay? So you could say, everything that's separate and all the income from separate, we leave with that at the end of this marriage. And that's it. And that's really a very small change to the income on separate property. And it sort of confirms what the separate property was in existence at the time of the marriage. It's a smart plan. Another common approach would be to do the same thing with the separate property, but then say, look, we do not intend to create any community property throughout the duration of our marriage. So whatever I make is mine and whatever he or she makes is theirs, and we take what we take when we leave. Sometimes those plans will have create a joint account that you share, and it talks about how they get divided, maybe pro rata. People put in certain amounts of money from, their paychecks to help run the household or pay for a house or whatever in a way that kind of seems fair. So that's one option. But you really want to think through in your particular life, with your particular circumstances, what makes the best sense for you in the future. Do you own a business? Are you entitled to trust, an inheritance? Is he or she have a lot of money or not much money? It's just pretty complicated. And I'm really going to ask you to talk to a lawyer before you sign anything like this and especially a lawyer who understands your goals in doing the prenup so that you can get a document that matches what you're trying to make happen. If you get a prenup, your divorce should be cheaper. I can't make any guarantees, right? I'm a lawyer and I have to tell you, it depends. But generally speaking, a prenup, I think of it like a divorce in advance. Here's how our stuff will get divided up upon divorce. So we don't have to have a gajillion-dollar divorce figuring all of that out, figuring out business valuations and everything. We've already said in advance what we're going to do. Now, what a prenup cannot do is change the way that child custody or child support will work. That's a key. So you can still have a big old expensive divorce where the only thing you're fighting about is the kids. And oftentimes what I see in a prenup situation is a challenge to its validity. Like somebody who enters into it and they don't like the terms anymore and they want to say for some reason they shouldn't have to follow it. Sometimes what people do is just cheaper to pay them some certain amount of money so that they don't have to go through a whole divorce process or a whole initial deck judgment action, just a thing at court. Go through a thing at court to say whether or not this agreement applies. And sometimes it'll cost somebody a decently big fat check to just kind of make that part go away. But as a general rule, a prenup should make your future divorce cheaper. If you didn't get a prenup before you got married, don't worry, all hope is not lost. There is one other option available to you, and that would be a postnup. And really, these are called marital agreements, like I say, nups, but that's not what they're actually called. It's a premarital agreement or a postmarital agreement, but you can do it after you get married, and some people do, but just think it through. How likely is that going to be to happen? I would say not very likely, because usually somebody wants a postnuptial agreement or a postmarital agreement after the marriage because they're trying to protect something. And if I'm trying to protect something in my marriage and keep it from the other person, then the other person is having to give something up. Because remember, in Texas, after the date of marriage, everything you buy or acquire that's not through gift or inheritance is both of y'all's. So a postnup would change that. Why would somebody sign that after the marriage? And there's a couple reasons. For asset protection reasons, and then another one is sometimes it's required by one of the parties to try to save the marriage. Like, hey, I'll continue to stay married to you and work on this, but I want you to sign a postmarital agreement that does XYZ things so that I can feel more comfortable in the marriage. So it's an option. I don't want you to think of it as a very viable option because it's unlikely, but it does happen.